You're listening to the God Life Culture Podcast, where faith
and what's trending collide. Welcome back to the latest episode of the God Life Culture Podcast. This is Eddie.
What's up, everyone? This is Miguel. We are so thankful that you are tuned in for another episode of the God Life Culture Podcast. We want to remind you right from the start to hit that subscribe button to make sure you are notified every time we drop a new episode. We want to thank all of our new listeners for joining us on this ride and for catching up on all of our previous episodes. Last week we hit a big milestone.
Yes.
It was our 100th episode. So 100 episodes, we said it was over 50 hours of content. So it was a very it was a great accomplishment.
Over almost 2,000 hours of content.
Yes, that is true.
Yes,
2,000 hours?
Yes, we
really?
About 50. Yes, I believe
really?
so. Yes.
Because yes, that is right. Because then that will only.
Oh, you know what? Actually, I was thinking minutes.
Yes, I was going to say 2,000 hours. Listen, I'm an English teacher, not a math teacher, so it took me a minute to get there. But 2,000 hours, that's a long time. But we're getting there. We are on our way to 2,000 hours. Yes. But it was awesome. So if you haven't checked out that episode, you can go back and definitely check that out. But Eddie, how are you feeling today?
You know what? Good. We are in our hundreds. Episode 101. Regardless of it, like we spoke about in our last episode, it's been a great experience so far. It's been an awesome ride, and now we're looking forward to see what these next 100 episodes are going to bring. And today we have a special guest with us that we're definitely looking forward to speaking with, someone who we've been familiar with for years.
Absolutely.
And now we've been given the opportunity to speak with her and just chat a bit about everything.
Yeah, so like you said, we have been familiar with her ministry, her music, everything that she's been doing throughout the years, and it's awesome to definitely have her be a part of the podcast today. So would you please welcome to the God Life Culture Podcast, Helen Kerins. Helen, how are you feeling today?
I am good. Super excited to be here.
Yes.
Like we were speaking off air, your sister Pastor Ruth Rodriguez, was with us a couple of weeks back, and we're very familiar with you guys and your work and your ministry and what you guys do. But for our listeners that may not be as familiar with you, we always love to ask this one opening question, and feel free to answer it however you receive the question.
Okay.
So, are you ready?
I'm ready.
So the question is, who is Helen?
Oh my goodness. What a loaded question. Who is Helen? I am a lover of all things Jesus. I am a daughter to Reverend Freddie and Pastor Dolores. I am the wife of Brian, the mother of Jack and Kennedy, a high school music teacher, a vlogger, a DIYer, an entrepreneur, a frugal person, a human being. I tend to be a jack of all trades. And I don't know, I guess I'm eclectic. I'll end it there. I'm an eclectic person.
Listen, and a lot of those things that you mentioned are things we're definitely going to jump into and speak about and pick your brain about. But one of the things you mentioned are your parents, Pastor Freddie and Dolores, who are currently pastoring in New Jersey, correct?
Yes.
And, we are familiar with your upbringing and how you grew up in a musical household with your mom and, how she would teach you guys instruments and stuff like that. And off the bat, I am curious because I lost the number of what Ruthie said, how many instruments she plays. But Helen, how many instruments are you familiar with playing?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I'm a classically trained clarinetist. That's what I studied. I can play the flute. I can play all of the saxophones,
Nice.
from soprano down to baritone. I can play the trumpet. I can play the euphonium. I can play the trombone. I can play percussion. I can do mallet percussion. I can do piano. I can do a few chords on guitar, but I do not say I play guitar. Not at all. I can play C, E minor, okay, G. And I've tried oboe. I haven't mastered oboe. I've tried bassoon too. I haven't mastered that, but yeah, I'm a symphonic musician. And then of course, vocal jazz. That was like my minor in college. So, were you taking count?
No, actually, I was just
No,
taken.
but
I was just enthralled by everything you kept throwing
Right.
at us, and then you started saying soprano this and
there was
other-
one instrument I didn't know what it was. First time hearing it. So
Which
it was
one? Oboe or bassoon?
Euphonium? What was it? Euphonium?
Oh,
What-
yeah. The euphonium. It's so funny because anything that starts with like like a euphemism or euphoric, eu, like a eulogy, means good. So a
Yeah.
euphonium is an instrument that means good sound. It doesn't matter how bad of a musician are. If you play euphonium, it will sound beautiful. A euphonium is like a baritone. It's like an oversized trumpet, or if it's in like the tuba like position, it looks like a baby tuba. If you can visualize that.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, listen, so basically what she's saying is we're going to put some respect on her name and on her musicianship, okay? But that's awesome. I mean, and, one of the things that, just thinking back in your ministry and who you are and through the years, you are a pastor's kid, and, growing up as a PK myself, I understand there can be many challenges and many stigmas, and there are many, just identities that surround that. And I think oftentimes when people, meet you and they know that you were a pastor's kid growing up and, you're still a pastor's daughter, they immediately have assumptions. They immediately think that they know, what your view is on the church or what your view is on pastors and pastorship. And I think oftentimes we can focus on the negative aspects of all of that. But I am sure, that there were some positive experiences, right? And things that you may look back at now and be like, wow, like I am super glad I had that experience and that upbringing. Is there anything that comes to mind at this moment where you're grateful that you were a pastor's kid and you were grateful that you had that experience?
As crazy as it sounds, I'm grateful for that one Sunday morning when someone stood up in the middle of the service and challenged my parents in the middle of the service. It was a really dark time because, I mean, you would think like you're preaching, everything is great, and now people are standing up and challenging you and trying to bring divide. And as a kid, it was hard because I didn't understand it much. However, as an adult, when I see it in hindsight, it trained me to be graceful under pressure. It allowed me to learn that not everyone is going to be on your side, and that's okay. It has taught me how to deal with conflict. As a high school teacher, you deal with conflict all the time. Kids giving you
Absolutely,
pushback, even teachers, administrators giving you pushback. And I'm so grateful for those crazy experiences early on in my parents' tenure as pastors, because it did form my character and learning how to deal with conflict and being patient with people.
I can't, I'm not a pastor's kid. I've definitely worked very closely with the pastors in the churches I've served in. And I have seen that firsthand on how they are super graceful under pressure, where, being this kid from the hood of Brooklyn, East New York, somebody come at me sideways, my initial reaction is to go hood.
Let them know.
But when you've worked under pastors who have shown you the example of being graceful under pressure, those are lessons you carry with you through life.
Yes.
You carry that at work. You carry that in the middle of Macy's when someone bumps into you. You carry that anywhere you go, the idea of being graceful under pressure. So it's really good that you bring that up, because I think that, somebody else in that experience could have taken that the other way around.
Yeah.
That experience could have been something different for them, but your perspective is an important one. And when I think about Helen, I look back and I'm like, man, when was the first time I saw Helen? How did I come into like knowing who you are? I think back to the True Destiny days.
Oh my gosh.
And one of the things that stood out to me from even back then was just how, not only that your sound is different, because I think that the way you sing and your voice is awesome, and what you do musically is different, especially for what was happening in the Christian world at that time.
Yeah.
But it's also the intention behind how you sing. So it's like your movements, your face, the heart behind it. So were you always just a natural worshiper, or was that a skill that you had to cultivate because of the gift you had?
Wow. Well, thank you for being so kind. Very, very nice of you to say those things. But I think it was a combination of the two. I think that the end of the day, I was born to worship. I know my mom was my first music teacher, teaching me how to play the organ and reading chords and whatnot. But then it really didn't, I guess, kick in until I got to college and I started studying music and I started understanding the artistry behind worship. And I know that could be controversial for some people, but I'm Helen. That's what I do. Okay. um, and I started understanding that when I would sing a song, I had to live out the lyrics, as I did a year of musical theater. And in musical theater, you have to dance, you have to sing, you have to act, you have to become the part. And if you're singing, something from West Side Story, and you're singing when Maria and Tony are in love, you have to sing like you're in love. You have to bring that to the table. And so when I started bringing that artistry into the church, and I started saying, wait a minute, I'm singing about how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. How he loves us so. And when I would think about the lyrics that I would sing and who I was singing it to, it just became something more. And for some people, I guess my artistry or my theatrics were a bit much for the church. But I just felt that I'm living and singing the part of someone who loves God and who recognizes that God loves her back. And I just had to express that, not just with my voice, but with the note choices, with the hand gestures, with the movements of the body. And it was just, I don't know, it was something that it really started clicking for me when I was in college, I guess in my 20s, just bringing praise and worship together with artistry. I think it's what made True Destiny stand out a little bit, because back in the day, you didn't see that much, and so some people loved it. Some people hated it, but it's okay.
Yeah, and I think that just happens regardless. Yeah. Unfortunately, especially when it's a new sound or it's a new feel or a new look or new anything. Yeah. I think that especially in our Christian circles, new doesn't always go well with people. It takes them a really long time to adjust. Yeah. And you have to use that skill that you learned early on of being graceful under pressure to kind of like get past that, because it's very easy to get discouraged. It's very easy to get upset. It's very easy to want to go off on people because you're like, I'm doing something good. I'm doing something. I'm giving my heart to the Lord, and you're over here giving me the stank eye. Like, what's up? So that's where we put into practice that grace under pressure.
Yeah, and I love the idea that, especially for worship leaders and being in the church and leading worship or just, singing, at different events and venues and all of that. I think the worship is that much more powerful when all of those areas that you were touching on are tapped into and brought into the worship experience, and I think that many times we focus on this one aspect of worship and what it looks like and what we're used to. And I think sometimes it takes for you to remember that God created us as creative beings, right? And God created all parts of us, and all those parts ultimately can be used to worship him, so I love the idea of even education when it comes to, singing and worship, where I think that if you lead worship in your church, you should have some type of knowledge or background or experience or, and I mean, I'm not talking about going to school. That would be great, but even just YouTube, right? Yeah. And looking up, different types of scales and warm-ups and all of those things. I think that's what makes the experience within our churches that much more powerful and that much more greater when we are also taking care of our instruments and also taking care and investing in our craft.
True. And it's funny you mentioned that because, with this whole like new pandemic world that we live in, I really felt the need to transfer from being like a one-on-one voice teacher to now like like master classes, group sessions, and I'm hosting voice master classes because I feel that there is such a need for worship teams to have access to quality education. Because not, like you said, not everybody wants to be a music professional and go to college for it. But if you want access to quality education, I feel that, I'm someone that can provide that. So I've actually started offering that service because, we do need to take the worship to the next level. We have to. We live in a world where we're so overstimulated with everything, technology, and there's always something going on. And I'm not saying that the church has to become flashy, not at all. But what I'm saying is that we do have to take our worship to the next level.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that 100%. And when like I said, I go from True Destiny, but then from there I go to your Verissimo project, Verissimo project. Sorry,
that's okay.
And which if you follow Helen, or if you don't follow Helen on YouTube, and she'll tell you all her socials later. You still have a documentary up on Verissimo, which gives you a background of the journey. It gives you all the songs, and I love all your music, but I think that two songs that jump out for me are Su Nombre es Jesus and Dios Solo Dios. And these are songs that I have not only seen you sing, but I've gone to other churches where this has been part of their worship.
Oh, wow.
They've incorporated this as part of their worship set. And have you ever experienced that? Have you ever seen other people sing your music? And if so, what does that feel like for you?
It's weird. I haven't seen it in person. Like, I haven't walked into a church and be like, yo, they're singing Dios Solo Dios. Okay. No, but somebody did send me a video of, I think it's a church in Spain, and they were singing it. And I'm like, okay, Spain, praise God. And then another sister church, friends of ours, Maria Angeli, her church a while ago sang Dios Solo Dios and Su Nombre es Jesus. And I don't know, I feel honored. I really do. I feel honored that people want to put me on their playlist. And it's just like, I feel humbled. And I'm just like, Lord, you gave me this talent to share it, and it's being shared. So praise be to you, and it's a nice feeling. I can't complain. It's a nice feeling.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things too where, we kind of like, it's a baby for us. So it's like something that's born in our hearts, and we put the work in, and when we like give it out to the world, and we hope that it blesses people, that it's a seed that lands in people's hearts, that ministers to them and provides to them whatever it is that they're looking from God, whether it's faith, hope, some strength, and kind of like we just send it out to the world, and wherever it lands, even if it goes all the way to Spain. I'm not sure if you've gone to Spain to sing any of your music, but if you haven't, your music has made it there, and your music has made it to other places that sometimes we won't even ever know about. We will not know the corners of the earth that our stuff has made it out to, but that just goes to show God's grace over our lives and what we do, especially when we do something wholeheartedly for him.
Yes, amen.
Yeah, and another thing that's a part of who you are, is you are also a poet, and many years ago you released a poetry book called Images of My Mind's Eye. And, this is something that to me was very special because I remember purchasing the book, right, years ago when it was released, and reading it, and definitely being very impacted. And I remember, a few years back, it was about 3 years ago, I believe, I had released a poetry album. And I remember coming across your book once again at that time, and like putting certain things together and being like, man, I should take these poems that I have in audio, put them in a book, and give some explanations about it. And your book was definitely something that I referenced and looked at, just as inspiration in doing what I do, so I just wanted to let you know that, and ask, do you still write poetry? And is this something that's still a part of you today?
Wow. Thank you for using my book as inspiration. I have not written in years, to be honest. There has been a little bit of a dry spell, and it kind of stemmed from life changes, getting married and becoming a mother, and being a provider in my home. And so I guess my mindset shifted so much that a lot of my creativity I kind of just put it in the back pocket. And it is now in 2021 that it is starting to emerge. So it's funny you mentioned the whole poetry book, because I haven't written anything, but I felt so moved to do a project with my students. And we're actually in the middle of doing a voiceover project where they had to pick poems and they have to create their own sequenced beat and do the voiceover over the poem. And I'm like, oh my God, I want to write again. So it's been a while since I've written, but I'm hoping that, 2022, I can unlock that creativity again and just start, sharing what's on the inside.
Yeah, and you probably haven't been writing, but I'm sure, like you said, there is content within you,
Yes.
and there are words that definitely, when you kind of have that moment to just like release them, they'll come from just all of these experiences throughout these years.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, and you are also not only, we spoke about this earlier, but you are also an active vlogger, right?
Yeah.
And you share everything with the world. Well, not everything, but you
Not
share
everything.
enough, right? You share everything from worship moments to, your debt journey, right? Your home decor, even moments that you have, in your personal life and things that you have experienced. But, like I said earlier, you share everything, right? But what sparked your interest in jumping into this vlogging world, especially, I think it puts you right in a position to be scrutinized by many, right? But two, also as a believer in these times, right? I feel like even more that just adds a whole different pressure and a whole different set of, expectations, right? That, sometimes people have of you. So what, definitely inspired you to go into this vlogging world?
So it's a few things that actually inspired me. Back when we had True Destiny, I kept urging my sister, turn on a camera and let's do a reality show on MySpace. Remember, back then it was MySpace.
Yes.
And she was like, and I'm like, dude, our Monday night rehearsals are so straight up crazy and so straight up fire that if we were to like release an episode once a week, every week, we would get a following. But she didn't really whatever, never did it. And then I let that go and I got married and then I got pregnant and, things started changing in the sense of I didn't have True Destiny anymore. I wasn't really actively participating in my worship team because it was becoming a bit difficult. And I'm not saying that the altar is the stage, but, I'm a trained musician and those are just terms that I use. So please, whoever's listening, don't get offended. It's Helen. That's just how I talk. But I didn't have a stage anymore. And I said, I need a stage. And I said, YouTube is my stage. And I told my students one day, like big, fat, and pregnant, I said, guys, I'm going to be a vlogger. And they started laughing. Miss, you crazy. I said, I know I'm crazy. And that's how Crazy Kerins was born. And and I set up the YouTube channel and, I couldn't really figure out what my niche was. And over time, it's been evolving, I guess, because, we as humans, we evolve. And so that was my first motivation. I needed a stage. I needed to continue performing because being a mother, it felt so difficult to go out and perform. It felt impossible for me. And I needed to feed my creativity. And then on the other end, because I do not love money, that is the root of all evil, but I do understand the importance of it. And as an entrepreneur, I want to capitalize on things. So I knew that I could capitalize on my life. And I knew that I could monetize a channel and I knew that I could earn money. And I worked very hard and got myself monetized. And, I don't get millions, but I do get something. So those were like the two main reasons. I needed a stage for my creativity and I wanted an extra source of income in my home.
And I think those are two valid things. I think that as creatives, there's nothing worse than feeling stifled, feeling like, like that itch of I want to do something. I can't figure it out. Maybe I can't do what I used to do and not finding a avenue and not finding an outlet for that creative spirit. And at the end of the day, we got bills to pay.
Yes.
So if you can make money from it, why not?
Yes.
And talking about money, let's talk about the Frugal Mom series. First first of all, I feel like as Latinos, maybe it's so like a lot of these stuff are things that, you know, we don't talk about that. You know, they're so taboo. I owe money on this, or I need to finish paying this student loan debt, or I need to do this or that or whatever. You know, I feel like as Latinos, we do not talk about those things. So was it easy for you to be so open and transparent about you tracking and paying down your debt?
It was easy because I'm a very transparent person just by nature.
Yes.
I think what was hard about it was like you said, you know, it's taboo for our culture. No habla de esas cosas en público, you know? So I was like, you know, that's the very reason why I want to share, because too many of us are living these fake lives of no, todo está bien, everything is great, and then you're at home drowning in debt. We're driving cars we can't afford. You know, we got cell phones that we're financing. Don't finance a cell phone. Are you crazy? No. And so I just felt like I'm going to put myself out there, and I'm going to tell the world that I have 6-figure student loan debt. And I'm going to share that I've had credit card debt. And I'm going to share that I sat in the lobby of a lawyer's office with my husband and my like 7-month-old daughter, ready to file for bankruptcy, because I know that there are people that are afraid to talk about it. But if I share my story, it might transform their financial life. So, you know, I enjoy doing that series. I haven't been keeping up as much, and I shared why on my channel. I've kind of reached a point where I don't really have debt aside from my student loans. So I was like twirling my thumbs, but I'm committed to the frugal mom, and I'm committed to tracking debt and hopefully being, you know, debt free one day. That's the goal.
Yeah, and I think that in one way or another, it's also a form of keeping ourselves accountable.
Yes.
Kind of when you put it out there, it kind of like, oh, well, the cat's out of the bag. So I gotta have to, you know, I guess I really do have to get on my A game with this. What's one advice that you would give to someone who has been teetering with the idea of getting their finances and debt situation together?
The advice that I give everyone that connects with me, just get a piece of paper and make a list. That's it. Just make a list. List your creditors. 1 to 10. If you have 10 credit cards, list them. List the APRs. List how much you're paying each month to that creditor. List the total balance that you owe. And then at the end of that list, add up how much you are paying per month on all of those cards. And then add up the total. And those numbers are so eye-opening that it kind of like shakes your core. So the easiest thing is just make a list. You have to see your debt, right?
Yes.
Before you can really like say, oh, I'm going to be debt free. But do you know what you owe? Put it on paper, you know?
Yeah. And you also have, you know, I've seen it on your social media, a debt tracker.
Yeah.
As well. Is that something that, again, just this process inspired and you just kind of, you know, created this, you know, to share with those who may be interested? What kind of inspired that?
I did. I've been tracking my debt for years now, almost 10 years. And I had a just random little notebook, and I would, you know, record myself writing in my notebook. And then I was like, why don't I create something? And I created a debt tracker. And I've actually, you know, been selling them because, of course, I have to capitalize on things, right?
Absolutely.
But I mean, you know, people get on me. They're like, you have to sell them for more money. You're not making enough money. And I'm like, at the end of the day, I don't want to make money. I don't want to profit off of this. I just want to make it and give you a tool that you can use to stay organized. So the debt tracker, it really is sometimes a break-even type of venture, or you know, I end up paying more out of pocket, but I don't care, because when I hear people tell me, oh my God, Helen, I just paid off this credit card, or, oh my goodness, I paid this off and I paid that off, and now my car note came down and I have more money in my pocket. I'm like, yes, those are the stories that fuel me and tell me, keep doing this. Like you're helping people to change their lives. So it's my inspiration.
And I think it's really good. And I think at the end of the day, you know, sometimes we do just have to do things like that that, serve a greater purpose.
Yeah.
And, there's other things that you can do to maybe capitalize on.
Yeah.
But with that, you've chosen that, and I think it's great. And you're seeing the responses from the people with that as well. You said it before, and I think it's a little evident that, you are a transparent person. And I think that you do that very gracefully. There's some people that are transparent and it's a little crazy.
Whoa.
That was too much information.
But then there's people like you that do have the ability to be very transparent, to be very raw, very open about situations, and do it in a way that is receivable from people. And on one of the subjects that this was on your YouTube page as well was like speaking about the topic of parenthood, and as being the resident dad on the pod, I have 2 kids. I've shared my experiences with fatherhood and maybe my concerns as well, especially with my first son, and like the idea of being, my biggest thing that I was very nervous about was whether or not we were going to bond. Whether or not, as someone who grew up without a positive, male role model, without a dad in his life, that was like my biggest fear. Like, how am I going to be able to connect with my kids, and not knowing what that feels like for myself.
Wow.
So there's been like a lot of conversations on parenthood that we've had throughout the years. And we've spoken about in different things. And I think that you have shared, very transparent moments on motherhood, your experience with your kids. There was this video that you had posted that my wife and I had started seeing it on my own, and I was like, nah, I gotta wait till I get home. And I saw it with my wife together, and it was when you were sharing your experience about when your kids got sick. Especially when Kennedy, Jack and Kennedy both got sick, but I think Kennedy really got the brunt of what happened. And you were very transparent about, where you were mentally as a mom in relationship with your kids, specifically Kennedy, and then also how that experience, brought you guys together. When I say that my wife and I were bawling, we were bawling at this whole video because there was a lot of truths and things that you spoke about. But also to see that at the end there was a really good ending as well is like one of those things that just really like tug at your heart. So I guess my question to you is, how did you feel right after you uploaded that video? Was it something that you shared with people first and then you posted, or was it like, I'm just gonna throw this out there and how it hits, it hits?
To be honest, I don't even know. That time period, it was such a blur because it all happened so fast. I knew that I had to share the story, for sure. I knew I had to. I think I uploaded it. I don't even know when I uploaded. I know it happened in February. I think I uploaded it in March. But I don't know. It was such a terrible situation, and I really firmly think it was God just kind of like pumping the brakes on a wheel that was going out of control. And it's so weird because I was thinking about it. I'm like, I knew I've always wanted a family, but I didn't want to be a mom. It's weird. I don't know. I can't even explain that too much, but I knew I wanted kids. I knew I wanted a husband, but the thought of being a mom was a bit much for me. And I think I took that for granted. And I was actually writing a book. And the book started taking a turn that was more negative than positive. Sometimes we know as human beings, we get caught up in that negativity drama triangle. And it's just like, we just keep going down, 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 down. And I really feel like the Holy Spirit was like, stop. Like, these are gifts that I gave you. These children that you have been asking for. These children that you should not have had. You had infertility issues. Even on the bed, as my guts were open, once they took Kennedy out of me, the doctor spoke over my exposed womb and said, I don't think you should have another child. It's not going to happen because of all of the complications that I had. And I think the Holy Spirit was like, either you change the tone of this book or you just stop writing. And I stopped. And then, my motherhood and parenting skills were not the best. And then, February 12th happened. and I'm like holding on to like my dying daughter's left ankle. And I just remember just talking to God, sometimes crying, sometimes pleading, sometimes praying, sometimes thanking God for the victory that is, even though she's literally dead on the table. And I don't know, I just felt like I didn't want to share the story, because it's funny, you mentioned before that I share everything on my YouTube channel and on my social media, but the fact of the matter is that I share maybe like 10% of my life.
Yeah.
And all the hard stuff, all the negative stuff. Whenever you see that there is silence on my social media, that's when you should pray. Because that's an indicator that I'm going through something. Because I'm not knocking anybody that does this, whoever's listening, but when people take pictures of the little hospital hand bracelet things, oren por mí, pray for me. Y'all, I'm sorry. I don't like that stuff. I'm transparent. I'm just being real. Estoy aquí, oren por mí. Be like, no. So
you need to go rest. That's what you need
stop.
to go do.
Lay hands on yourself, okay, and pray for yourself. But I'm just not that person. And so that moment in my life and my family's life was so difficult and so dark. And I was like, I'm not sharing this with nobody. And then it hit me. I'm like, no. I said, this is a testimony that we have to share. You know, what God did on that day, how this little girl who should have been dead, who should have had brain damage. I mean, she had no oxygen, lungs collapsed. It was terrible. And here she is, you know, vibrant 6-year-old. So I don't know. I shared the video and I hope that it ministers to other people that are maybe going through a difficult time as parents. I don't got it all together, that's for sure. I'm still learning this whole parenting thing, but I'm just grateful that the Holy Spirit rebuked me years ago and that he pumped the brakes and he said, what you're doing is not right. Either you switch it or I take this away. And I said, no, don't take it away. I'll change. And I did. And so, you know, hopefully, I never ever want to do a vlog like that again, but if ever I have to help somebody else or just to help myself heal, then that's what I'll do.
Yeah, and I mean, it's obvious that all of that just takes boldness, it takes bravery, it takes, you know, vulnerability and you being okay, you know, in that space to do that. And as you're talking, you know, I think it's crazy. I think, you know, you go through things as a child, right? And you go through these things and they teach you something. They teach you a lesson. Then you grow and you're a teenager and you go through even more things. And, you know, then you learn a little bit more about life and about God, and you learn a little bit more about people. And then, you know, you get married and you learn some more lessons. You have kids and you learn more. And in all of these life experiences that you go through, I think there are constant lessons that you learn throughout each experience, you know. And in your experience about, you know, this time in your life that was so dark and so heavy and just, you know, a lot of things going on, I ask you, what has the Helen today learned about God that the Helen in that time did not know or did not remember?
I always knew God to be a powerful, wonder-working, miracle-producing, all-loving, all-present God. I just knew because I've just seen so many miracles in, you know, my sister's life and my family. And I've always, I guess, experienced God by proxy. And this experience has now taught this new Helen that God is so real and he is so present. And I can say that because now I have experienced it myself. I have seen his, you know, wonder working power in my family. I have seen, you know, the transformative change in all of us at Casa Kerins. And I don't know, it has formed me and it has made me more of a person that is appreciative of just being alive and, you know, hoping to experience more of those miracles and more of his love. But definitely the Helen a few years ago, she knew who God was because she had heard about him from other people. But this Helen knows who God is because, man, when I was in that trench, he was there.
Yeah.
And so it's different. It's much different now.
That's awesome. And I'm confident that our listeners, and those who are tuned in are definitely going to receive that and just be encouraged. You know what I mean? Just listening to all of that. It's encouraging to me. And I know that, those connected will definitely, feel that and just be challenged in those areas as well, and we want to give you this opportunity before we close out to just share a little bit about, your social media, your YouTube channel, any projects you're working on, something you have coming up, where we can find you on social media. Let us know all of those things.
For sure. You guys could totally catch me every Wednesday night or every Saturday morning on my YouTube channel, which is just Helen Kerins. You could also find me on Instagram, Helen Kerins _. And you could also find me on Facebook, Helen Kerins. And if you want to reach out, because I know a lot of people sometimes want to reach out privately, feel free to email me, HelenKerins1978 @gmail, and I will respond.
Now, you had mentioned before your masterclass. Is that something that is still open and people can join, or is that something you were doing with the school?
No, my masterclass is something that I'm offering to churches. So if a church wants to bring me out to work with their worship team, it could be just, a one-time thing, a 2-hour masterclass. Or some churches would say, you know what, we want to bring you out for, like a 6-week training. Then I would go out once a week for 6 weeks and work with the worship team. It is really a tailored program with evaluation and, action plans and strategies and exercises and whatnot that will hopefully help the team grow.
Nice.
if they choose to apply what is being shared with them.
That's the key. If they choose to apply. All right. And they can just email you or reach out to you through your socials to set that up, correct?
Definitely, yes.
All right. Awesome. Helen, is there any last words you want to say before we close today's episode?
It is just so awesome to hear both of your voices, to connect with you guys, and to be on this podcast. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Helen. And make sure all of you who are listening that you go subscribe to her YouTube channel, check out her videos. There are those vulnerable moments like we shared. There are also just, awesome, just like life hacks and DIY stuff that she does. I mean, you just did like this cocoa bar, like hot chocolate thing for Christmas and the holidays. Like there's a bunch of things that, she has on her channel. So definitely be sure to check that out and follow her on all her social media platforms. So Helen, once again, we want to say thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you guys.
And for all of our listeners, be sure to subscribe so you can be notified every week when we drop a new episode. We are almost to the end of this year, 2021, and we're super excited for, everything that's coming up and, all of our guests and all of the awesome things that we have planned for this upcoming year. So definitely stay connected, stay excited, because there's a lot more in store.
Yeah, so thank you, Helen, once again for joining us. Thank you to our listeners who, once again, were part of this journey with us, and hopefully you walk away from today's episode feeling blessed. So thank you for joining us on the God Life Culture podcast. That's God Life Culture. Until next time.
See ya.
Bye.